Hey guys, tonight we're slipping through the lava lamp haze of the 1970s, back to a time when polyester was a lifestyle. Salad was made of jello, and there was absolutely nothing ironic about a grown man riding a unicycle through the desert in a fringed vest. Tonight's story? Why 1970s cult leaders used LSD to control their followers. It's the only era in history where a guy with a bad mustache, a beat-up guitar, and a suspiciously large collection of wind chimes could accidentally start a movement that ended in either enlightenment, mass confusion, or a SWAT team. But before we set out on this mind-bending, possibly hallucinogenic, definitely absurd journey, take a second to like the video and subscribe. But only if you actually enjoy what I do here. Leave a comment telling me where you're listening from and what questionable sleep aid you're using tonight. Is it chamomile tea? Is it Netflix? Is it the existential dread of 1970s cult fashion? I want to know. Now, dim those lights, turn on a fan for that soft, soothing, slightly paranoid white noise, and get comfortable. Maybe wrap yourself in a blanket. Ideally not the patchwork Afghan your Aunt Carol crocheted during her free love phase, but you do you. Let's get curious for a second. Have you ever wondered what it's like to fall asleep while an earnest man named Rainbow Dan insists he's the reincarnation of the Egyptian sun god, as a record of whale sounds plays backwards in the background? Would you have joined a cult for the free snacks? Or at least the promise of cosmic understanding and a pretty solid drum circle? Could you sit through a 7-hour monologue on astral projection without asking for a bathroom break? Would you drink the special Kool-Aid? Or just politely pretend? And how did people with names like Brother Moonbeam convince a room full of adults to follow them into the woods and start a commune based entirely on the teachings of a talking dog? Congratulations. You've just woken up in California, 1972. There's a paisley bandana on your head, your shoes are missing, and someone is asking you, very seriously, what your aura color is. Good luck. It's the 1970s. Richard Nixon is sweating, disco balls are multiplying, and America is waking up with a spiritual hangover from the 60s. Everywhere you look, there's a new group forming in someone's garage, each one promising the answer to life's big questions. Provided you're willing to sell all your possessions and embrace corduroy. Let's set the scene. You're in suburban California, where the air smells faintly of incense, burnt toast, and whatever your neighbor's herbal tea really is. The Cold War is on TV. Watergate is on the radio. And the only thing more unstable than the economy is your cousin's band. You've got questions about life, the universe, the meaning of avocado toast, and absolutely no internet to give you the wrong answers. So you're looking for something real, something deep, something that comes with a newsletter printed on purple mimeograph paper and an invitation to a meditation potluck. Cults don't just appear out of nowhere. No, they start with a simple recipe. Take 1 part social anxiety, 2 parts generational confusion, and season with an existential dread that pairs nicely with polyester bell-bottoms. Sprinkle in a national distrust of institutions. Thank you, Vietnam. And a whole lot of people realizing their 9-to-5 job doesn't actually lead to personal fulfillment, just a growing collection of novelty mugs. The result? You, standing in a friend's living room, nervously clutching a cup of questionable punch, while a bearded man named Star Brother Larry promises he can unlock your cosmic potential for the price of a used Volkswagen. You can feel the shift. Suddenly, everything is up for grabs. Faith, love, identity, dietary restrictions. Organized religion feels old and distant. But spirituality is everywhere, being repackaged and resold with a macrame plant hanger. Yoga classes pop up in church basements. Astrology columns make the front page. And every other person you meet is finding themselves by following a guy who swears he can talk to dolphins. There's an undeniable allure to it all, the promise that if you just sit in the right circle and hum the right frequency, you'll find your purpose, or at least a new group of friends who won't ask about your tax returns. At the heart of this movement is a kind of gentle, vaguely psychedelic desperation. People are looking for meaning, but they're also looking for belonging. The American dream is feeling less like a picket fence and more like a chain-link maze. So why not try something radical, like group chanting or a silent retreat led by a man in gold lame pants? And if it doesn't work out, well, at least you'll have a good story for your therapist, assuming you can find one not currently leading a consciousness-raising seminar. The great irony of the 1970s cult boom is that, on the surface, it all looks harmless, even fun. There are sing-alongs, crafts, fondue nights, and the ever-present promise of a higher truth. But lurking beneath the surface is a different kind of hunger. The need to be told what to do by someone who seems to have all the answers, even if those answers involve chanting at sunrise and avoiding microwaves. You're here for enlightenment, sure, but you're also just tired of making your own decisions. If you ever wondered why your parents were so suspicious of weirdos with pamphlets, it's because half the block has been invited to join something with a name like the Institute for Cosmic Harmony and Improved Snack Foods. You don't even have to be lost to be swept up in it. All it takes is a single moment of curiosity, a flyer left on your windshield, a friend of a friend, a free spiritual screening, and suddenly learning about vibrational energy while someone tries to sell you a purified quartz crystal shaped like a small potato. By the time you realize what's happening, you're in too deep to turn back. The line between community and commune is blurrier than your vision after that third cup of ceremonial wine. You haven't worn shoes in days. You know all the words to the group's theme song. And you're starting to suspect that enlightenment is mostly about getting along with people who smell like patchouli. And that, friend, is how the cults of the 1970s found their moment. It wasn't about evil masterminds or secret plots, not at first. It was about the simple, irresistible hope that somewhere, someone had figured it all out. And maybe, just maybe, if you stuck around for one more meeting, you would too. Your fearless leader arrives. He's part mystic, part used car salesman, and somehow always smells like patchouli and disappointment. His origin story involves an epiphany behind a Taco Bell, and you're expected to call him something like Supreme Teacher Gary. Naturally, he insists on sitting, cross-legged, everywhere, always. Let's take a closer look at Gary, because in the world of 1970s cults, there was always a Gary. Maybe your Gary goes by Rising Thunder or Solar Prophet. But let's be honest, his real name is probably just Gary. His hair is shoulder length and suspiciously shiny for someone who claims to be above material things. His beard, too, is equal parts wisdom and split ends. The man wears flowing robes, or a bathrobe depending on laundry day, jewelry that clinks with every sweeping gesture, and sunglasses indoors, which he claims is because his third eye is sensitive to fluorescent lighting. Gary doesn't walk into a room, he glides, or at least shuffles with purpose. Every entrance is a performance, complete with knowing smiles, deliberate silences, and an aura of barely concealed chaos. He always starts the meeting with a deep sigh and a faraway look, as if he just got back from astral traveling. But really, he was microwaving instant coffee in the hallway. His gaze is intense, bordering on a contact sport. You feel seen. You also feel slightly inspected for loose change. Gary's background is a mystery wrapped in a riddle and sprinkled with vague allusions to time spent studying with Himalayan masters. The actual truth is less glamorous. He used to sell waterbeds, failed at running a juice stand, and once spent an entire summer living out of a van he called the Cosmic Chariot. But the less you know, the better. It helps maintain the mythos. Every story he tells is interrupted by someone asking, "Wait, did this happen before or after you got banned from Burning Man?" The answer is always both. Now, Gary's greatest power is his voice. Gentle, slow, always on the verge of saying something profound. He speaks in aphorisms that sound meaningful if you're sleep-deprived or under the influence of homemade kombucha. The journey inward is the path upward, and the upward path is, in fact, just a spiral made of love. If you dare to question what that means, you're just not ready. This is a convenient way to avoid follow-up questions, and also how Gary got through high school English. But it's not just Gary's words that keep people hanging on. It's his almost supernatural confidence. Gary is never unsure, never uncertain. He knows the secret of the universe. He just can't tell you yet. And for the low, low price of 3 months' wages and your favorite record collection, he promises to reveal it to you one syllable at a time. When the rent is due, he encourages sacred donations to keep the vibrational field pure. When the microwave breaks, it's a sign from the cosmos that you should eat more raw food. Gary surrounds himself with a loyal cadre of slightly confused but very enthusiastic assistants, each with a New Age name like Rainbow, Celeste, or Dave. They handle logistics, enforce the group's no shoes inside policy, and lead warm-up chanting sessions when Gary is running late. He's always running late. Time is a social construct, after all. These followers have mastered the art of nodding gravely whenever Gary speaks, creating an echo chamber so strong you'd think you're in the world's weirdest canyon. At meals, Gary always eats first, claiming it's part of the ancient tradition. He'll compliment your vegan casserole while secretly slipping some store-bought cookies under the table. You suspect Gary's never met a whole grain he liked, but he's great at pretending. He'll offer you a blessing that sounds suspiciously like something he just read on a tea bag. May your inner seed sprout in the garden of cosmic delight. Thanks, Gary. And then there's the posture. No chair is safe. Gary will always, always find a way to sit cross-legged, be it on the floor, a desk, or, once, the hood of someone's car. He says it aligns his chakras, but you're pretty sure it's just so he doesn't have to help with the dishes. So why did every cult have a Gary? Because people in the 70s were looking for someone to follow, and Gary, with his bottomless well of vague advice, mysterious past, and unwavering self-assurance, was always ready to lead. Just don't ask to see his tax returns, or why there's always a faint smell of burned sage whenever he leaves the room. That's not patchouli. It's the scent of leadership, or maybe just whatever's smoldering in his sacred ashtray. Either way, you're here, you're listening, and suddenly, you can't remember a single reason why you shouldn't trust a man who claims enlightenment can be found in a Taco Bell parking lot. Here comes the main event, LSD. This isn't your average party drug. It's the secret source cult leaders used to turn Taco Tuesday into a cosmic revelation. Drop a tab and suddenly the wallpaper is giving you advice on spiritual leadership. Let's start with the basics. You're sitting cross-legged on a shag carpet, a spiritual playlist humming in the background, when Supreme Teacher Gary hands you a tiny square of blotter paper decorated with a cartoon sundae. He tells you this is the key to universal awareness, and also the reason nobody has to take out the trash until further notice. With a deep breath, you let it dissolve on your tongue. 30 minutes later, you're still waiting for wisdom to descend, when the room begins to shimmer and someone starts giggling at the coffee table. You realize it's you. The coffee table is, for some reason, hilarious. LSD or lysergic acid diethylamide if you're feeling fancy, is the miracle molecule of the era. Forget about years of meditation, hours of chanting, or reading dense spiritual texts. Just one tiny tab, and your brain does the cha-cha through the cosmos. The walls breathe. The carpet becomes a topographical map of Atlantis. And you're suddenly very interested in the inner lives of potted ferns. What started as a guided meditation quickly becomes a deep philosophical debate with a lava lamp. Now, for the cult leader, LSD is more than just a shortcut to enlightenment. It's a cheat code, a tool for turning everyday group meetings into transcendental journeys, where even the most skeptical follower starts nodding along to proclamations about the inner divine. You'd be surprised how persuasive Gary's sermons sound when delivered under a swirling disco ball and the influence of hallucinogens. Even his theory about Atlantis being under a bowling alley starts to seem plausible. But LSD isn't just about seeing things, it's about feeling things. Suddenly, you love everyone in the room. Even that guy who keeps hogging the vegan dip. Colors are brighter, music is deeper, and every word Gary utters seems weighted with cosmic significance, especially if it rhymes. The boundaries between me and we blur, and you're no longer just a cult member. You're a cell in the big, groovy body of the universe. At least until the rug starts pulsating and you need to go lie down. Of course, there's a method to the madness. Gary knows that group LSD sessions build a sense of unity. Suddenly, strangers are best friends, and communal living feels less like a logistical nightmare and more like an eternal slumber party. The leader's voice becomes the anchor in a sea of cosmic confusion, his gentle instructions the only thing tethering you to reality. Focus on my voice, he says, as the ceiling turns into a kaleidoscope of spirit animals. Let go of your ego, he adds, which you do, along with your wallet, your shoes, and all memory of why you thought this was a good idea. It's not all fun and games. Cult leaders soon realize LSD can also break down resistance. Followers who showed up just for the free snacks are now confessing their deepest secrets, singing ancient-sounding chants and agreeing to help paint the meditation yurt at sunrise. Peer pressure has never felt so mystical. If you're not having a cosmic breakthrough, you start to worry you're not open enough. So you close your eyes tighter and try to look as enlightened as possible. Gary, meanwhile, is in his element. With the group blissfully suggestible, he introduces new rules, new ceremonies, and sometimes new fees. The path to awakening, he intones, is paved with both intention and a modest donation. No one argues, because at this point, you're pretty sure Gary's beard contains the secrets of the universe, and possibly some lost car keys. Modern science, looking back, is baffled by it all. Sure, LSD does some wild things to your serotonin receptors, but it doesn't actually give Gary psychic powers or make the kitchen utensils vibrate with ancient wisdom. Still, the combination of altered perception and a persuasive leader is potent. You want to believe. You want to see. And Gary, well, Gary is there to narrate the journey and pass the hat. By the time the effects start to wear off, you're left with memories of a night that felt both 5 minutes and 5 years long. Did you discover enlightenment? Maybe. Or maybe you just spent 2 hours talking to a floor lamp named Sheila. Either way, you're in deep now, and Taco Tuesday will never be the same. You don't need a marketing budget when you've got a Volkswagen bus and a dream. Cult leaders hit college campuses, parks, and half-finished yoga studios, scooping up anyone with unresolved father issues and a half-remembered Grateful Dead lyric. It's a golden age for wandering and wondering. You wake up in 1973, sunlight slanting through paisley curtains, and all around you the world is humming with possibility and confusion. Jobs are hard to find, rents are going up, and your English degree has left you unqualified for everything except writing angsty poetry about the void. You're looking for something. Meaning, connection, maybe just a group of people who won't judge you for wearing sandals year-round. Enter the cult recruiter. Part mystic, part social worker, part dude who never really left Burning Man. There's an art to it, you see. The best cult recruiters know how to find you in your most vulnerable state. They're at coffee shops, offering to read your aura for the price of a muffin. They hang around bus stations, armed with pamphlets printed on recycled paper, talking about cosmic destiny and free healing workshops. They spot you at the crossroads of existential crisis and leftover birthday cake. And they know just what to say. Are you happy? The answer is always no. But at least, now you've got company. The recruitment pitch is never aggressive. It's soft, gentle, and just the right amount of mysterious. Have you ever felt like you were born for something more? Do you sense energy when you walk past crystals? Have you considered the possibility that all of us are reincarnated Atlanteans, with a sacred duty to protect dolphins? You laugh, but you also wonder, just a little, why not you? Why not now? They invite you to a meeting, no pressure, no obligation, just a gathering of like-minded seekers. It's in a living room that smells strongly of sandalwood and weakly of last week's lasagna. You take off your shoes, mandatory of course, and squeeze in among a ragtag group of strangers who introduce themselves with names like Sky, River, and Denise. But you can call me Rainbow. There's a welcome circle, some questionable herbal tea, and suddenly you're chanting about universal love with a dozen people you just met. It's oddly comforting. You notice a pattern. The people who show up are rarely the confident, well-adjusted types with a mortgage and a gym membership. No, they're the misfits, the dreamers, the kids who never really fit in, the recently dumped, the freshly graduated, the ones who just moved to the city and aren't sure if they locked their apartment door. There are a lot of hugs. Nobody asks for your resume. Instead, you're told you belong. And after a lifetime of feeling weird, that's enough to get you back for next week's drum circle. Soon, you're hooked by the sense of community. A group that celebrates your quirks instead of rolling their eyes at your handmade tie-dye. Here, everyone's got a story about the universe sending them signs, usually involving car trouble or mysterious birds. And every anxiety can be soothed with a new breathing exercise. Even the stoners and drifters, people you wouldn't trust to water your plants, are welcomed with open arms and an invitation to cleanse their chakras. Clever recruiters keep it light at first. They promise freedom, friendship, enlightenment, and maybe a chance to jam on the group's single, slightly out of tune acoustic guitar. You share your worries. You talk about your parents, your hopes, your last psychedelic experience that went sideways in a Taco Bell parking lot. Everyone nods in sage agreement. You're not lost, you're on a journey. You're not alone, you're part of the tribe. Of course, there are always a few warning signs, but by the time you notice them, you're deep in the group chat, helping build a sweat lodge out of scavenged tarps and making big plans for the next group road trip. Your new friends want you to bring more open-minded souls. The line between "I found my people" and "I think I joined a cult" is suspiciously thin. In the end, cult recruitment in the 1970s is equal parts happenstance, hope, and good old-fashioned loneliness. All you needed was someone to listen, a place to belong, and maybe a well-timed ride in a van covered in glitter paint. And just like that, you're in. No marketing degree required. Just a dream, a bus, and the magnetic power of shared confusion. Step into your first group meeting. There's a suspicious amount of bongo drumming, a bowl of something that's either quinoa or aquarium gravel, and everyone is smiling just a little too much. Soon, someone's passing out enlightenment tabs, not FDA approved. It all starts innocently enough. You were promised a community potluck and consciousness raising. You expected maybe a few casseroles and some vague chat about astrology. But what you walk into is part dinner party, part participatory theatre, and part experimental pharmacology. The furniture is all mismatched. Pillows on the floor, a hammock in the corner, and a collection of beanbag chairs that have absorbed decades of hopes, dreams, and possibly hummus. Someone greets you at the door with a handshake that lasts a little too long, and you're offered herbal tea that tastes like it was brewed with forest floor. The soundtrack is heavy on the drumming. Nobody really knows what rhythm they're playing. But that's not the point. The point is energy, which, according to your host, must be kept flowing. You're not sure if you should start swaying along, or call animal control because a didgeridoo just joined in. It's not clear where it came from, or if it will ever leave. Meanwhile, the food table is a minefield of well-intentioned experiments. A celestial stew that is mostly turnips, cosmic crackers that double as coasters, and a suspicious chocolate enlightenment pudding that probably started life as mashed beans. As you find your spot on the floor, Gary, yes, always Gary, welcomes everyone with a deep, theatrical breath and a speech about opening your mind to higher frequencies. He says this while wearing a poncho and several necklaces, none of which match, and sitting on the only piece of furniture that looks remotely comfortable. The ceremony begins, not with a prayer, but with the sacred smudging of the air using sage, or maybe just the end of a slightly burned incense stick from the local flea market. Then comes the sharing circle. One by one, everyone takes turns describing what brought them here tonight. Some people speak of spiritual longing, others of heartbreak, others of trying to align my chakras with the lunar cycle. Everyone nods encouragingly. You try to blend in, mumble something about searching for meaning, and are immediately rewarded with more smiles and a second helping of raw kale chips. Acceptance, it seems, is the appetizer. But the main course, the real reason for the gathering, is the ceremonial enlightenment tab. Gary presents a tray of tiny, decorated squares of paper, as if he's unveiling the Holy Grail. The instructions are simple. Let the tab dissolve on your tongue. Close your eyes and open yourself to the cosmic flow. You're pretty sure this isn't how they do it at church potlucks. But at this point, you're curious, and peer pressure is a powerful seasoning. As the tabs make their rounds, someone dims the lights and the music changes from enthusiastic drumming to a more ethereal mix. Think whale sounds and a single synthesizer played by someone's nephew. People settle in, eyes closed, ready for the vision journey. There's some guided meditation, mostly Gary telling everyone to be the water and let go of your name, for names are merely prisons of the soul. A few people start giggling, one person starts crying, and you suddenly feel a strong urge to call your mum and apologize for not learning a practical trade. Time starts to lose its meaning. Was it 5 minutes or an hour since Gary told everyone to embrace their inner salamander? The walls seem closer, the carpet softer, and every word spoken in the circle takes on an enormous cosmic weight. Gary leads a synchronization chant, and even if you don't know the words, you hum along, grateful for the sense of belonging. Or maybe just for the rhythmic distraction from the taste of the tab. As the evening goes on, the group feels more like a single weird organism. You start to believe you really are connected to everyone else in the room. Even the guy in the corner who hasn't blinked since dessert. Conversations spiral into existential territory. Someone shares a theory about time travel using only breathwork. You catch yourself agreeing. You're not sure if it's the enlightenment or the pudding talking. When the lights slowly brighten and people begin stretching, you realize the ceremony is winding down. Gary gives a closing blessing and a gentle reminder to bring a friend next week, and maybe a donation, so the cosmic energy and the lease can stay strong. You leave the meeting a little dazed, a little confused, and strangely happy. Did you achieve enlightenment? Maybe. Or maybe you just really needed to spend an evening with people who believed in something, anything, even if it was just each other and the healing power of bongo drums. Welcome to your first cult ceremony. Part potluck, part brainwashing, and if nothing else, an excellent story for Monday morning at work. Forget about subtlety. If you want authority in the 70s, you need a kaftan, beads, and hair that looks like it's been struck by lightning. Bonus points for a walking stick and sunglasses indoors. The less practical, the more respect you get. Let's get visual for a moment. You walk into a spiritual gathering, and you know who's in charge before anyone says a word. It's the person in an orange kaftan so dazzling you could signal satellites with it. The fabric swishes dramatically with every gesture. And if you look closely, there's probably an Om symbol somewhere near the hem, just to remind you that this isn't just any outfit. It's a statement, capital S. Meanwhile, the rest of the group is playing catch-up, shuffling in wearing tie-dye, hemp, and that one macrame vest that's more holes than yarn. Guru fashion is never accidental. In the great kaftan arms race of the 1970s, style is the first step toward spiritual dominance. It's like peacocking, but with more fringe and less self-awareness. The logic goes something like this. The more your outfit suggests you're either enlightened or have no access to a mirror, the more trustworthy your spiritual advice becomes. Scarves? Stack 'em. Beads? Layer them until your neck is in danger. Feathers? Wear at least one, preferably in a place that makes no anatomical sense. And don't forget the hair. For some reason, the more your hair looks like it was recently electrocuted, wild, voluminous, possibly concealing a small animal, the higher your rank in the metaphysical hierarchy. The cult leader's mane has its own weather system. It's rumored to generate its own static electricity, which is handy for lighting incense or fending off non-believers. If you ever wondered whether it's possible to achieve wisdom through conditioner, you're about to get your answer. Sunglasses, naturally, are a must, especially indoors, at night, and during eclipses. They aren't just for blocking out negative energy. They're to give the guru an air of mystery. No one can see where they're looking, which is helpful when you're reading your prophecies off the back of a granola box. The more impractical the shades, the better. Some leaders favor mirrored aviators, others giant bug-eyed lenses, and a few even go for the legendary double sunglasses. Yes, 2 pairs stacked on top of each other, just in case the astral plane is particularly sunny today. But let's not forget about accessories. The walking stick is a classic. Is it needed? Never. But does it lend gravitas? Absolutely. Some are carved with mystical symbols. Others are just regular broom handles, painted gold. The point is to look ready for both a pilgrimage and an impromptu folk dance. Anklets jangle, bracelets tinkle, and there's always at least one ring that looks like it could open a portal to another dimension, or at least to a really good health food store. You start to notice how quickly the fashion escalates. One week, Gary the leader is just wearing a simple robe and mala beads. The next, he's showing up in a custom kimono and a headdress made out of recycled peacock feathers, claiming the universe told him to express his inner plumage. The inner circle tries to keep up, but it's not easy. There are always whispers of someone spending an entire month's rent on a ceremonial poncho, and heated debates about whether authentic enlightenment can be achieved in machine-washable fabric. It's not just the leaders who fall prey to this cosmic competition. Soon the entire group is sizing each other up. Did Moonbeam add another layer of batik? Did Rainbow finally sew bells onto his sandals? Nothing says I'm serious about enlightenment like the gentle jingling of your feet during guided meditation. You start to wonder if you're spiritually stunted for not owning a crystal-embroidered shawl. Still, there's a method to the madness. The outfit signals to newcomers who's in charge, who's next in line, and who's still wearing mundane denim jeans, a sure sign of an unenlightened mind. It's like spiritual Darwinism, but with more paisley and less natural selection. In the end, guru fashion in the 70s wasn't just about looking good or bad, or like you'd lost a fight with a thrift store. It was about building a hierarchy without ever saying a word. The more unwearable the garment, the higher the rank. And if you couldn't pull off a 7-foot scarf, well, maybe you just hadn't reached that level of consciousness yet. Maybe next week, friend. Maybe next week. It's time for group meditation, which looks suspiciously like everyone napping in a circle. The leader claims to control your thoughts with his mind, but mostly he controls the thermostat and whether you get another serving of lentil loaf. The afternoon sun filters through the dust motes, highlighting a circle of people sprawled across the floor in various states of transcendence. You're told to sit cross-legged, palms open, spine aligned with the cosmic axis, which, judging by the squeaky beanbags, points roughly toward the kitchen. There's a gentle hum of anticipation, broken only by the gentle snoring of someone who's found their spiritual center a little too quickly. Supreme Teacher Gary, perched regally on his cushion, explains that this is not just group nap time, it's a collective journey to the inner sanctum of universal truth. It just happens to look exactly like dozing in a yoga studio. Gary begins the session with a guided meditation, his voice a soothing monotone. Imagine yourself floating down a river of pure consciousness, past the shores of earthly attachments toward the sea of infinite oneness. You try to follow along, but the only river you're picturing is the sweat trickling down your back, and the sea of oneness smells strongly of incense and burnt toast. You sneak a peek around the circle. Denise, no, Rainbow, has definitely drifted off. Moonbeam is breathing so loudly you wonder if he's astral projecting or just suffering from seasonal allergies. Every few minutes, Gary reminds everyone to come back to the breath, as if the breath is something you can misplace, like your car keys, or your will to attend another meditation. Someone's stomach rumbles, which is interpreted as a sign of deep energetic release. Another participant starts giggling, and the group responds by breathing even louder, determined not to be distracted from their transcendence. You try to focus, but your mind wanders to practical things. Did you unplug your iron? Is enlightenment compatible with polyester? Is there a snack break soon? Eventually, Gary announces it's time for deepening the practice with hypnosis. He promises to access the subconscious realms, guiding you to release old patterns and activate your latent cosmic potential, which, translated from cult speak, means you're about to take a very convincing nap while someone recites affirmations about universal abundance. Gary swings a crystal pendant in slow circles, his voice dropping to a dramatic whisper. You are safe. You are loved. You are definitely going to buy more group merchandise this week. The group sighs contentedly, marinated in suggestion. The hypnotic part of the afternoon is a blurry blend of vivid daydreams and faint embarrassment. You hear someone confess to being a reincarnated Egyptian pharaoh. Another declares their spirit animal is a microwave. Gary beams with pride, declaring great spiritual breakthroughs. although he does quietly skip over the microwave thing when summarizing the group's progress. Of course, not everyone is buying it. There's always one skeptic in the back, probably still wearing socks with their sandals, who keeps one eye open and tries to sneak a peek at their watch. Gary simply says, "Some souls resist because they're on a higher octave of vibration," which is cult speak for stop ruining the mood. After a while, the journey winds down. Gary invites the group to gently return to this plane of existence and, if you feel so moved, share any visions, revelations, or new dietary restrictions discovered during the session. There's a gentle stretch, some yawns, and a mild stampede toward the snacks. Someone claims to have communicated with their past self. Someone else has decided to give up gluten. You wonder if you should have tried harder to achieve enlightenment or just admit you came for the lentil loaf. In the end, group meditation and hypnosis in the 70s cult scene is equal parts nap, improv theater, and gentle social pressure. You might leave feeling lighter or just hungrier, but one thing is for sure. Gary gets to control the thermostat, the narrative, and the dessert tray. And as you stretch your legs and try to hide your drool spot on the meditation pillow, you can't help but think that maybe, just maybe, you're on the path to enlightenment, or at the very least, to a really solid afternoon snooze. Why bother with years of spiritual discipline when you can take one tab and see God in the shag carpet? Cult leaders promised instant awakening, but what most people found was a sudden craving for Pop-Tarts and a vague feeling of being watched by the lamp. The 1970s were all about shortcuts. Who needs to meditate in a cave for 7 years when you can meditate in your living room for 20 minutes with a handful of strangers and a bottle of tap water? LSD is the cult leader's secret weapon, a mystical elevator straight past all those boring steps like self-examination, ethical living, and not trusting guys named Gary. The pitch is simple. Why chase enlightenment when you can have it delivered express to your frontal lobe, free of charge? With only a modest suggested donation and the small matter of signing over your personal property, you sit in a dimly lit living room, listening to Gary, supreme teacher, spiritual navigator, and part-time drum circle referee, explain the true path to awakening. He speaks in soft, echoing tones about breaking through the illusion and connecting with the universal pulse. In reality, you're connecting with the couch cushions, while someone in the next room debates whether or not plants can hear your thoughts. The sacrament is passed around, a little piece of decorated blotter paper, which you're told has been blessed, activated, and possibly licked by a Tibetan monk. It hasn't. After about half an hour, things start to shift. You realize the wallpaper is moving in patterns that might be either sacred geometry or just the result of a really bad paint job. The dog is staring at you. No, wait, it's not your dog. You don't even have a dog. The group meditation becomes a collective adventure in keeping a straight face while the universe's secrets are revealed in the swirling patterns of the rug. One guy is convinced he's having a conversation with an ancient Egyptian pharaoh through the couch springs. Someone else just discovered their spirit animal is, in fact, a rotary phone. Gary sits above it all, serene and wise, occasionally offering nuggets of wisdom like, "Let go of time, let go of self, and pass me the cheese puffs." You can't help but wonder if ancient sages also required a steady supply of salty snacks. The line between enlightenment and snack attack blurs. For every cosmic download, there's a sudden need for sugary cereal and an inexplicable desire to write poetry about the refrigerator's emotional journey. The best part, Gary insists, is that you don't have to do any of the hard work. Forget the tedious silence of a meditation retreat or the cryptic advice from some bearded guy on a mountain. Just tune in, drop out, and see what happens. It's like spiritual Netflix, instant streaming, but all the movies are starring your own thoughts and that one lamp in the corner that keeps looking at you funny. Of course, for some people, this shortcut ends up being more of a scenic detour. There are tears, there are giggles, and there's always at least one person who gets stuck staring at their own hand for 45 minutes. Everyone is awakening at their own pace, which, for the guy curled up on the beanbag chair, is not so much awakening as falling gently asleep while the rest of the group debates whether enlightenment can be achieved lying down. And that's the secret no one tells you. Enlightenment, when chemically enhanced, might just be another word for finally taking a nap without guilt. The visions range from the profound, we are all stardust, to the practical, we should vacuum more often. Someone inevitably announces that they've discovered the secret of life, but forgets it by the time they reach the bathroom. At the end of the night, Gary collects the group for a closing circle, reminding everyone to write down their insights and bring extra snacks next time. You leave feeling changed, lighter, and possibly in need of electrolytes. Enlightenment may not have happened in the way the sages promised, but you definitely understand the true meaning of existence as a journey, especially the journey from the couch to the kitchen and back again. Because in the 70s, who needs a mountaintop when you've got LSD, a good couch, and an imagination that just won't quit? You want to join the inner circle? Prepare for a ceremony involving feathers, chanting, and a strict policy on eye contact. There's always a chant that sounds suspiciously like a Steely Dan lyric, and someone's always playing a didgeridoo for no clear reason. Joining a cult in the 1970s isn't just a matter of showing up and remembering to bring vegan chili to the potluck. No, to truly belong, to be trusted with the group's secret handshake, or at least their most treasured granola recipe, you have to pass through a rite of initiation. It's part theatre, part improvisational comedy, and entirely designed to see how willing you are to suspend disbelief and dignity in the pursuit of higher consciousness. The more absurd, the better. It always starts with sacred preparations. You're told to fast for at least 6 hours, an eternity in a house where the only snacks are carob brownies and a tub of something labeled Cheer Surprise. After that, you're dressed in ceremonial garb, a robe fashioned from bed sheets, a necklace of beads and pasta shells, and the mandatory feather of awakening, usually plucked from a very unimpressed parakeet. Gary, now supreme initiator, greets you at the threshold with a solemn nod and a wink. He hands you a stick of incense, which smells a lot like garden mulch, and asks you to set your intention, which is cult speak for try not to laugh. The inner circle, resplendent in their finest kaftans and moon boots, gathers in a circle and hums a note that vibrates somewhere between G major and help. My foot's asleep. There is chanting, of course, always chanting. The words are a mishmash of Sanskrit, Beatles lyrics, and instructions for assembling Swedish furniture. Nobody actually knows what they're saying, but the group effect is mesmerizing, or at least hypnotically confusing. If you lose your place, just mumble and sway. That's how everyone else is getting by. Then comes the ritual of cleansing the aura. This involves being lightly smacked with sage branches, doused with a spritz of blessed water, filtered tap if you're lucky, and slowly spun around while the didgeridoo player circles ominously. At some point, you're told to stare deeply into the eyes of the person next to you without blinking for what feels like several lifetimes. This is meant to break down the illusion of separateness, but mostly it just makes you question your life choices and how long it's been since you moisturized. Next is the sacred offering. You are encouraged to share something important, a childhood memory, a dream, or a homemade poem about the meaning of corduroy. Gary receives each offering with exaggerated gravity, nodding as if you've just revealed the secrets of Atlantis, then asks you to place your burden in the communal basket, which is just a repurposed salad bowl from the kitchen. There are hugs, there are tears, and there's always someone who overshares about their previous lives as a medieval troubadour. But the best part of initiation is the group test of trust and unity. This can be anything from a levitation attempt, 3 people lifting you by your pinky fingers, to a blindfolded walk of faith through a living room maze of furniture and sleeping pets. All the while, someone, usually the least musically inclined member, keeps the didgeridoo going, just in case the spirits of Woodstock need a soundtrack. Finally, Gary bestows upon you the group's sacred name. It might be Celestial Dolphin, Harmony Ray, or, if he's in a silly mood, Muffin Spirit. You are now officially part of the inner circle, entitled to secret knowledge, mostly about where the good snacks are hidden, and infinite access to the group's collection of tattered self-help books. As the ceremony concludes, there's a group embrace, a chant for unity, and abundant positive vibes, and a reminder to wash your ceremonial robe before next week's full moon potluck. You leave feeling a mix of confusion, amusement, and odd satisfaction, because if you can stand through an initiation like this without running for the nearest exit, you're either incredibly open-minded or just really, really desperate for a sense of belonging. And that, in the end, is the point. The more absurd the initiation, the deeper the bond. You are now one of the chosen, at least until someone catches you humming Steely Dan in the grocery line. Why do people go along with it? Well, it turns out if everyone else is nodding, you'll probably nod too, even if you're not entirely sure whether you just joined a meditation or an amateur theatre group. It's the magic of the crowd, the subtle pressure that transforms ordinary people into enthusiastic followers of Supreme Teacher Gary's Cosmic Groove method. You settle onto a throw pillow, cross-legged, and a little unsure, but everyone else looks so serene, so certain. The candles are burning low, string lights twinkle overhead, and a lava lamp gurgles softly in the corner. The mood is set for transformation, or at least a really convincing game of pretend to be enlightened. In the warm, shifting glow, skepticism slips quietly out the back door, replaced by a pleasant sense of, well, if they're all doing it, it starts small. You're invited to close your eyes and breathe together as one, and you do. Because, why not? The sound of a dozen people inhaling in near-perfect sync is oddly soothing, and Gary's voice floats through the darkness, promising peace, connection, and the occasional gluten-free snack. Suddenly, Gary asks everyone to raise their hands if they feel the universal vibration. You peek. Everybody's hand is up. So you shoot, yours skyward too, even though all you feel is a slight draft from the open window. As the night goes on, groupthink turns up the heat. Someone laughs. Everyone laughs. Someone starts swaying, and soon the whole room is gently rocking, like a boat powered by collective confusion. There's always that moment when someone asks, "Did you feel that energy shift?" And even if you didn't, you nod, because nobody wants to be the only one not vibrating. By the third chant, you're pretty sure you just agreed to help build a sweat lodge and maybe refinance Gary's van. The lighting is part of the magic. Harsh reality doesn't stand a chance against well-placed Christmas lights and candle jars painted with peace signs. Colors swirl and shadows dance, making everyone look just a little more mystical and a little less like the people who work at your local organic grocery store. Under these groovy lights, anything feels possible. Levitation, enlightenment, or at least a group discount on hemp shampoo. Groupthink isn't just about what you believe, it's about how you act. Social psychologists would call it normative conformity. You call it not wanting to be the only person sitting still while everyone else is pretending to channel their spirit animal. As the hours stretch on, your sense of individual judgment fades, replaced by the cozy, slightly delusional logic of the group. If everyone's chanting about cosmic dolphins, maybe I'm just out of touch, you reason. I should probably chant louder. And here's the trick. It doesn't matter if you were a skeptic when you walked in. Surrounded by a group of true believers, it becomes almost impossible to hold on to doubt. The person next to you might be an accountant on weekdays and a shamanic drum enthusiast on weekends. But tonight, in this candlelit circle, they're your cosmic sibling. Every group activity, from synchronized hand-holding to interpretive dance, reinforces the idea that together, you're part of something bigger, even if that something mostly involves humming and avoiding direct sunlight. By now, you've probably forgotten what normal even felt like. There's a strange comfort in letting the group carry you. It's not your job to question, only to go with the flow, nod at the right times, and pretend you totally understand Gary's latest metaphor about the inner giraffe. Individuality is overrated, anyway. Out there, you're just another person with a day job and a questionable taste in shoes. In here, you're part of a cosmic wave of awakening souls, which sounds way cooler on a bumper sticker. So why do people go along with it? Because we're social creatures, hardwired for belonging, approval, and not being the only one left out of the group photo. In the end, the real power of groupthink isn't that it tricks you into believing the unbelievable. It's that it makes you feel like you're exactly where you belong, even if you can't quite explain why there's a didgeridoo solo happening behind you. Welcome to the 70s cult experience. Come for the enlightenment, stay for the funky lighting, and leave with a mild case of peer-induced euphoria and possibly an entirely new opinion about lava lamps. Every cult needs a signature beverage. Whether it's neon punch, ceremonial wine, or a smoothie that tastes like lawn clippings, you drink it because everyone else is, and the leader said it'll open your third eye. Or maybe just your gag reflex. In the psychedelic melting pot of the 1970s, drinks were never just drinks. They were elixirs, sacred infusions, or, if Gary was feeling ambitious, liquid gateways to the cosmic realm. Forget ordinary orange juice. Here, every liquid is suspiciously chunky and probably comes with a story about how it was blessed under a full moon by someone's second cousin. If the beverage glows in the dark or fizzes in unexpected colors, you're assured it's simply brimming with positive energy, not food dye and existential regret. The beverage ritual usually kicks off just after the third round of bongo drumming, when everyone's throat is parched from chanting and the room is ripe for collective vibrational alignment. Gary, supreme pourer of the sacred jug, will unveil a punch bowl that looks like it was borrowed from a church basement in 1968. Inside, a liquid that is part fruit punch, part science experiment. The surface is scattered with mysterious floating herbs to aid enlightenment, and a lone chunk of pineapple that's probably been through more spiritual journeys than most of the people in the room. Ceremonial wine is a crowd favorite. It connects us to the ancients, Gary explains, pouring out glasses of what tastes suspiciously like the cheapest bottle from the supermarket, spiked with a handful of goji berries and something green that no one wants to identify. You're told to sip slowly, savoring the earthy resonance and subtle notes of oneness. What you actually get is a mouthful of vinegar and a burning question about whether enlightenment is supposed to make your tongue go numb. But if you truly want to prove your devotion, there's always the group smoothie. This is where hope goes to die. Gary's recipe is shrouded in mystery. Passed down from an ancient recipe he claims was revealed to him in a vision, or possibly on the side of a wheatgrass carton. Into the blender goes a wild collection of ingredients: spirulina, chia, kale, local dandelion leaves, and something he calls moon dust, mostly powdered ginger and wishful thinking. The resulting sludge is an alarming shade of green and thick enough to stand a spoon in. It smells like freshly mowed lawn and regret. Naturally, the drinking of these concoctions is a sacred moment. The group gathers, cups in hand, as Gary leads everyone in a blessing. May this sacred potion open our chakras, realign our energy, and not make us violently ill. You clink glasses, hold clink your breath, and try to swallow without letting your face betray your true feelings. The aftertaste lingers. So does the sense of communal accomplishment. If you can choke down Gary's smoothie, you can probably survive anything: group ice baths, trust falls, or 3 consecutive hours of interpretive dance. Not all special drinks are disgusting, but none are optional. The act of sipping together is a bonding ritual, a mildly cultish version of cheers that binds the group through shared experience, mutual suffering, and the possibility of mild hallucinations. Even Kool-Aid, now forever infamous, makes the rounds at some gatherings, served ice cold in fluorescent glory, and always with a knowing look. The rules: don't ask what's in it, and don't be the first to say you don't feel anything. Peer pressure is half the flavor. Of course, there are always stories. Someone will inevitably claim the punch gave them visions of their past life as an Incan priest. Another swears the smoothie allowed them to finally hear the voice of their pancreas. You, meanwhile, are just hoping your stomach forgives you before the next group meditation. In the end, these special drinks do exactly what they're meant to: build trust, lower inhibitions, and give everyone something to talk about besides their dreams and unresolved family drama. When the last drop is swallowed and the cups are passed back for next week's reuse, it's an eco-conscious cult after all. You realize you've just taken part in another small ritual of belonging. Maybe you're a little queasy, maybe your third eye is just watering, but you're officially one of the gang, ready to raise a glass to whatever comes next, even if it's just more bongo drums and a picture of something that smells vaguely of enlightenment and definitely of kale. The leader's main weapon isn't wisdom. It's his ability to maintain intense eye contact for way too long. He's hypnotizing, or maybe he just forgot to blink. Either way, you're entranced, and also starting to worry about your personal boundaries. Welcome to the Cult Charisma Olympics, where locking eyes is considered a spiritual power move, and blinking is strictly optional. Supreme Teacher Gary has perfected the stare. It's his trademark, equal parts unsettling and mesmerizing. He'll gaze at you across the circle, his pupils unflinching, as if he's reading your deepest secrets or trying to set your aura on fire. The effect is magnetic, partly because you're convinced he can see into your soul, but mostly because you're afraid to look away first and risk breaking some sort of unwritten, possibly cosmic rule. Gary wields eye contact like a Jedi wields the Force. Group meetings inevitably include the circle of intention, where each member must hold hands and stare, unbroken, into someone else's eyes while repeating mantras. It's a trust exercise, a mind game, and a staring contest all rolled into one. If you look away, you get a knowing smile and a gentle encouragement to try again, as if true enlightenment is just one sustained gaze away. This isn't just for show. Eye contact in the cult world is used to project confidence, authority, and Occasionally, a warning: don't challenge the leader, or you'll find yourself on the receiving end of the supreme gaze, an unblinking look so intense it could curdle oat milk. Gary knows that the longer he holds your eyes, the more you'll doubt yourself, and the more you'll start to believe in his mystical insight. You could ask him about the universe, the meaning of dreams, or just how much incense is too much, and he'll answer with a silent, piercing look that says, "You already know, you don't." After a while, you start to question reality. Maybe Gary does have all the answers. Maybe he is channeling wisdom from an ancient civilization, or maybe he just memorized a book about body language. The lines between hypnosis and plain old awkwardness blur. Some followers claim to have seen visions in Gary's eyes. Swirling colors, animal spirits, or even their own childhood memories. You just see your own reflection, blinking desperately, wishing you'd worn sunglasses. It's not just Gary either. The entire hierarchy of the group is built on eye contact. The inner circle has its own version, the silent transmission. Here, they sit in a triangle, gazing deeply into each other's eyes in total silence for 5 minutes. Afterward, they nod in solemn agreement, having shared energy, which looks suspiciously like mutually assured discomfort. For outsiders, it's intimidating. For insiders, it's proof of belonging. After all, nothing says trust like letting someone stare at you without laughing, crying, or running for the door. Personal boundaries, of course, go out the window. You're told that looking away is a sign your ego is resisting transformation, or worse, that you're blocking the flow. At first, you try to maintain your usual bubble of personal space, but after a few weeks, you find yourself making unbroken eye contact with strangers at the grocery store, silently daring them to feel your vibration. This is either the next stage of spiritual development or just the world's slowest path to a restraining order. Sometimes, Gary turns the stare into a performance art. He'll pick a newcomer, gaze at them until they squirm, and then declare that he's just removed an energy blockage. Other times, the stare is the entire lesson. True wisdom, he intones, cannot be spoken, only shared through the windows of the soul. It's deeply moving if you're under the influence of enlightenment tabs, and deeply unnerving if you're just here for the snacks. By the end of the night, you're emotionally exhausted and slightly cross-eyed, but you've passed another unspoken test. You let Gary look straight through you, and you didn't run away, faint, or break down and start talking about your first-grade piano recital. And that, in cult world, is practically a diploma. So you keep coming back. Maybe for answers, maybe for meaning, but partly just to see if you can outstare the guru. After all, enlightenment is a journey, and sometimes it's just about making it through one more awkward group gaze without blinking. Every revelation sounds profound in the moment, especially if it's accompanied by a sitar. You'll learn that we are all one, time is a flat circle, and the universe is inside your elbow. Write that down. It'll seem important later. The magic of an LSD-fueled revelation isn't really about what's said. It's about how it feels, which, under the swirling kaleidoscope of 70s lighting and the insistent drone of Gary's favorite sitar cassette, is to say, everything feels like the secret of existence itself. Someone in the group, usually the one with the most tie-dye and least impulse control, will announce, "Guys, what if the moon is actually just a reflection of our collective soul?" You nod gravely, because at that moment, it's not just an idea, it's a truth, a cosmic download, beamed directly into your brain through the haze of incense and the lingering aftertaste of that suspicious smoothie. One revelation leads to another. Suddenly the air is thick with insights, most of which would never survive the cold light of sobriety. Someone starts sketching a diagram that links karma, disco, and the reproductive cycle of earthworms. Another person is convinced they can taste colors. Gary nods approvingly, encouraging everyone to share their truths, and so the circle becomes a free-for-all of philosophical hot takes. The self is an illusion. Love is a verb, not a noun. I think my chakras are allergic to polyester. You scribble these down, knowing you'll want to revisit them later, if only to decipher what on earth the universe is an elbow was supposed to mean. Of course, the physical side effects of LSD don't help the clarity of these cosmic messages. For every breakthrough, there's a simultaneous outbreak of giggles and a desperate search for snacks. Cosmic truth, it turns out, often arrives right alongside the munchies. Someone declares they've achieved total oneness with the universe, then spends 15 minutes in an existential crisis about whether to eat the last Pop-Tart. The sitar solo crescendos, and you realize that your hunger is not just hunger, it's a metaphor for spiritual longing. Or maybe you're just really, really craving cheese puffs. Gary, naturally, is in his element. He interprets every random thought as a sign of spiritual progress. "You're awakening," he declares, after Denise announces that all spoons are actually tiny mirrors for the soul. You're seeing the patterns behind the patterns when Moonbeam starts stacking crackers into a fractal pyramid. No matter how nonsensical, every insight is met with encouragement and the offer of more herbal tea. The only wrong answer is silence. The truth is, not all revelations are created equal. The ones that come with tears, "I never told my third-grade teacher I forgave her," feel earth-shattering at the time. The ones that come with laughter. Has anyone else noticed that we're basically just talking to Gary's cat, bind the group together? But as the night wears on, profound discoveries blur with the surreal. "I am the cheese, and the cheese is me," someone announces. That's it. That's my truth. Nobody argues. In fact, Gary gives them an honorary crystal to wear as a pendant. What lingers, though, is a sense of connection. Every revelation, no matter how wild or silly, is honored as part of the group's collective journey. It doesn't matter if you'll remember any of it tomorrow. For now, you're in a space where ideas are currency, and everyone's a philosopher, at least until the sitar music runs out and someone starts quoting Garfield comics as spiritual texts. By the end of the night, your notebook is a fever dream of one-liners and doodles. You are the cosmic egg. Trust the sock puppet within. You're not sure if you're enlightened or just exhausted, but you do feel strangely understood. Maybe that's the real revelation, that in the company of fellow seekers and under the influence of a little chemistry, even the weirdest wisdom feels profound. And who knows, maybe the universe is inside your elbow. Stranger things have happened, especially on LSD. It's not a proper cult without an impending apocalypse. Your leader's been getting messages from the cosmos, or possibly just from his roommate, about the coming doom. Better stay loyal, just in case. Every group has to have a hook. For Supreme Teacher Gary and his merry band of barefoot seekers, that hook is fear. Specifically, the kind of all-encompassing, end-of-the-world anxiety that turns ordinary people into doomsday preppers with a fondness for granola. You may have joined the group for enlightenment, community, or just to meet people who wouldn't judge your collection of paisley shirts. But before long, you're sitting cross-legged in the sacred lounge as Gary explains that the world as you know it is, unfortunately, on the verge of cosmic collapse. It starts innocently. Maybe Gary mentions a shift in the energy grid, a disturbance he felt while meditating, or napping, under a pyramid-shaped blanket. Someone brings up a recent blackout, and Gary launches into a monologue about signs from the universe, earthquakes, lunar eclipses, the fact that your favorite juice bar ran out of wheatgrass. The group nods solemnly. Because what if he's right? What if all those missed bus connections and burnt casseroles are just the beginning? Once the idea takes hold, it spreads like incense smoke in a crowded meditation room. Someone recalls seeing a guy in a suit with sunglasses lurking near the recycling bins. Was it a government agent? The room agrees it was probably CIA, or maybe the Illuminati, or possibly just Steve from the HOA. No matter, now the group is buzzing with talk of them, the shadowy forces who want to keep you asleep, unawakened, and suspiciously out of vegan cheese. The threats get bigger as the nights go on. There are whispers of government mind control, fluoridated water, and microchips hidden in every pack of gum. Gary claims to have received a download from the Pleiadians, which sounds high-tech but mostly means he had a weird dream after too much kimchi. The message is always the same. Time is running out. The world will soon change. Unless you stick together, meditate harder, and ideally, up your monthly donation to the Cosmic Preparedness Fund. This is where the fear really takes root. The world outside becomes more threatening. Friends who question the group's beliefs are labeled energy vampires. Family members who suggest you come home for Thanksgiving are accused of trying to disrupt your frequency. The only place that feels safe is inside the circle, preferably beneath at least 3 dream catchers and a thick layer of sage smoke. The fear works, not because it's logical, but because it's communal. There's a strange comfort in huddling together against imagined threats. Gary gives long, impassioned speeches about the coming age of darkness and the test of true loyalty. There are practice drills for psychic attacks, which mostly involve holding hands and visualizing white light, but occasionally result in someone throwing a sandal at a suspicious squirrel outside the window. To add flavor, Gary weaves in just enough truth to make the warnings plausible. Sure, there's political turmoil. Sure, the environment's a mess. And yes, sometimes the government does seem a little shady. Why not take it a step further? Why not prepare for the day when only the spiritually attuned will survive the great shift, the final awakening, or the inevitable shortage of gluten-free pasta? By now, the group has entered full survival mode. There are stockpiles of lentils, gallons of distilled water, and a growing list of forbidden toxic household items, plastic wrap, Wi-Fi routers, and anything made after 1957. Gary drafts an escape plan that involves hiking to an undisclosed forest location and living off the land, or at least off what's left in the granola bins. You practice your protective chants, memorize secret hand signals, and try not to think about how hard it'll be to find decent coffee after the collapse. In the end, it's not really about the specifics of the doom scenario. The important thing is that you're united against the world, against the forces, and most importantly, against the creeping doubt that maybe, just maybe, Gary's latest revelation is just another cosmic prank. But as long as the end is always near, so is the bond between you and your fellow believers. And that's what really keeps the group together, one doomsday prophecy at a time. Meet your fellow seekers. Some are idealists, some are just lost. And one guy definitely thinks he's on a reality show. But everyone's looking for meaning, community, and maybe a place to crash where nobody judges your macrame skills. Step into any 70s cult gathering and the first thing you'll notice, after the wave of patchouli and the faint aroma of burnt lentils, is the sheer variety of people sprawled around the room. There's the classic idealist, wide-eyed and earnest, who truly believes world peace is just one group chant away. They're here because they read Siddhartha in college, sold their possessions, and now floats serenely through the circle, quoting Rumi and giving unsolicited advice about breathwork. They mean well. They always mean well. Next to them is the lost soul. Maybe it's someone who just got out of a bad breakup, flunked out of their third major, or never quite felt at home anywhere else. They drifted into the group with the promise of belonging, and now they stay for the endless affirmation circles and the occasional gluten-free brownie. They're easy to spot. Hopeful, slightly anxious, and always clutching a self-help book with far too many dog-eared pages. Then there's the escape artist, the one who just really needed to get away from something. Overbearing parents, a boring job, a city that smelled like hot garbage in the summer. This person loves the idea that you can reinvent yourself with a new name, a new set of beliefs, and a closet full of borrowed kaftans. They take to cult life with the enthusiasm of someone who has seen the inside of too many cubicles. Freedom, for them, smells like sage and the inside of a Volkswagen bus. But the true backbone of the group is the hobbyist philosopher. You know the type. They come for the enlightenment but stay for the endless debates about whether time is real or just an illusion created by microwave ovens. They have a collection of crystals, a stack of unread philosophy books, and a knack for derailing every discussion into a heated argument about the metaphysics of Tupperware. They're both delightful and insufferable, and nobody's quite sure what they actually believe, but that's sort of the point. Some followers are, simply put, drifters. These are people whose only real plan is to follow the nearest group that promises a roof, a meal, and an excuse to play the bongos at 3 a.m. They might not be seeking truth, but they're definitely seeking snacks and a couch to crash on. You'll find them wherever the food is, sometimes asleep in the meditation room, and always ready with a story that starts with, "You won't believe where I was last month." And yes, there's always at least one true believer. The true believer is Gary's shadow. First to arrive, last to leave, and always ready to back up any proclamation, no matter how absurd. If Gary claims the universe is shaped like a toaster, the true believer will already be sketching diagrams and prepping a toaster-themed group chant. They hand out flyers, collect donations, and quietly keep a list of who brought kale to the last potluck. For them, the cult isn't just a phase, it's the answer to everything. Finally, there's the wild card, the one who definitely thinks they're on a reality show. They wink at invisible cameras, narrate their actions like they're auditioning for Survivor, Spiritual Edition, and have a tendency to turn every activity into an elaborate performance. Nobody really knows how they got here, but nobody's in a hurry to ask them to leave either. Despite the differences, everyone shares one thing in common. They're searching for something, meaning connection, an escape from the crushing mediocrity of everyday life, or just a chance to finally show off their macrame owl in a judgment-free environment. Underneath the kaftans and the chanting, they're all just people, hoping that in this ragtag community, they might finally find their place, or at least someone to split the rent with next month. And that's what binds the followers together. It's not just belief or fear, or even hope. It's the simple human longing to belong, to laugh, to share, to pretend for a few hours each week that maybe, just maybe, they're one chant away from figuring it all out, or at least from learning how to play the didgeridoo without getting lightheaded. There's always a moment when the leader asks, "Would you follow me anywhere?" This is usually followed by another round of tabs and a trust exercise that involves balancing on a yoga ball while chanting about vibrational energy. It's late at night, the incense is burning low, and everyone's cheeks are flushed from hours of group sharing and whatever was in that kale smoothie. The energy is tense, electric, as Gary, the ever-charismatic, occasionally cross-eyed leader, rises from his cushion and surveys the room with the kind of confidence usually reserved for motivational speakers and toddlers in superhero capes. Tonight, he announces, we're taking our commitment to the next level. In most groups, commitment means showing up on time or remembering someone's birthday. In the cult, it means collective mind-bending, followed by an obstacle course for the soul. Gary passes around a fresh sheet of enlightenment tabs, each one carefully decorated with a glitter pen. The instructions are simple. Trust the journey, trust the group, and trust that this time, Denise won't try to climb the curtains again. As the tabs kick in, so does the ceremony. The group is ushered into a circle, yoga balls distributed, and Gary, his pupils now as big as saucers, explains the sacred test. You're supposed to balance together, arms outstretched, chanting something that sounds like vibrationally connected, please don't fall. There's a giddy sense of camaraderie, even as half the circle wobbles dangerously and the other half dissolves into fits of giggles. Loyalty, Gary explains, is about letting go of fear, of doubt, and sometimes of your dignity as you slide off the yoga ball into someone else's lap. The idea behind this ritual isn't just group fun. It's about trust, complete, unfiltered, slightly chemically enhanced trust. Gary reminds you that the spiritual journey is best traveled with friends, especially friends who are too disoriented to question why you're all now pretending to be a flock of enlightened geese. The point, he says, is that only through shared vulnerability and collective absurdity can you truly forge the bonds needed to face the coming apocalypse, the local PTA, or, at the very least, tomorrow morning's group breakfast. And so, the tests escalate. There's blindfolded trust walks through a living room scattered with spiritual debris and the occasional napping house cat, group harmonics, in which everyone is required to hum a note until someone passes out, and a ceremonial recitation of the sacred vows of following Gary, which mostly involve promises to be present, share snacks, and never question the group's devotion to brightly colored scarves. The LSD, working its unpredictable magic, ensures that each activity is less about critical thinking and more about merging into a single, undulating organism of cosmic faith. But it's not all laughs and enlightenment. There's an undercurrent of pressure. Every follower knows what's expected. To surrender, to believe, to not be the one who breaks the circle or asks if maybe, just maybe, Gary is making some of this up. Peer pressure does the rest. If the group's jumping, you jump. If they chant, you chant. If they declare the lamp in the corner to be radiating pure joy energy, you give it a respectful nod, just in case. Gary's masterstroke is always the same. After the exercise, he'll fix each person with that famous, unblinking stare and ask, "Would you follow me anywhere?" By this point, the answer is almost always, yes, yes, Gary, through every metaphysical test, every midnight journey, and every awkward group hug. The LSD isn't just a party favor. It's a shortcut to breaking down the last defenses, blurring the line between self and group, skepticism and surrender. In the morning, the memory is hazy. You vaguely recall balancing on something, singing about oneness, and making solemn promises to a person in a poncho. But you do remember feeling, for a fleeting moment, like you belonged, like you were truly part of something bigger. That's the real loyalty test. And whether it's LSD, trust falls, or just plain loneliness, it works. Welcome to the cult. Loyalty required, critical thinking optional, yoga ball experience recommended. There's always an inner circle. They get the best sleeping mats and first dibs on the carrot cake. But mostly they serve to enforce the rules and whisper about who's not opening their chakras enough. Think of the inner circle as the cult's version of middle management, only with more essential oils, and less dental coverage. These are Gary's chosen ones, the advanced seekers who have proven their loyalty by passing every initiation, staying awake through the entire group meditation, and never once questioning Gary's theory that he once lived as a Himalayan snow leopard. You can spot them by their elaborate kaftans, their ability to recite every group mantra backwards, and the fact that they always seem to have the best seat near the heater. Their job: maintain order, stir up drama, and above all, make sure nobody rocks the metaphorical boat. If someone dares to skip a chakra alignment session or sneaks out for a midnight burger run, the inner circle is the first to know. They watch, they whisper, they quietly collect data on every member's energy levels, spiritual discipline, and snack contributions. You're never sure whether to trust them, fear them, or just offer them a slice of the group's gluten-free banana bread in exchange for leniency. Paranoia is the seasoning in every meeting. The inner circle is convinced that spiritual purity is always at risk. From negative outside influences, stray thoughts, or that one guy who keeps asking when they're going to get Wi-Fi. They devise rules, spoken and unspoken. No denim, bad for vibrations. No doubting Gary's intuition, and absolutely no questioning why the inner circle seems to get all the new pillows and none of the compost duty. There's a subtle social choreography to it all. Inner circle members drop cryptic hints about advanced practices and higher frequencies, always just out of reach for regular folks. They have private meetings, which you're told are for harmonizing the group's aura, but mostly involve voting on who gets to choose the next sacred beverage and which member's energy is bringing down the group mood. If you ever get invited, it's a big deal. You'll know you've made it when you're allowed to ring the Tibetan singing bowl or adjust the lava lamp without asking first. The rest of the group is both intimidated and fascinated by the inner circle. They talk in hushed tones about ascending to that level, earning the coveted front row spot at Gary's weekly teaching, or finally learning the secret handshake, which turns out to just be a normal handshake, but with extended eye contact and a whispered affirmation about personal growth. It's a mixture of ambition, awe, and just enough FOMO to keep everyone compliant and eager to please. For the inner circle, power comes with a price. Paranoia runs deep. They're constantly watching their backs and their auras. For any signs of rebellion or spiritual slacking, they guard their position fiercely, knowing that one slip, or one less than sincere could land them back among the regular mortals, doomed to lumpy sleeping mats and last pick at the carrot cake. Competition is subtle but fierce. Who's meditating the most? Whose beads have the best energy? Who can repeat Gary's teachings verbatim while balancing on a yoga block? And yet, despite all the tension, there's an odd comfort in the hierarchy. The inner circle provides structure, ritual, and just enough gossip to keep things interesting. They're the glue that holds the cult together, or, depending on your perspective, the granola that gets stuck in everyone's teeth. By the end of each meeting, the inner circle retreats to their privileged corner, nibbling snacks and reviewing the evening's spiritual performance reports. You lie on your humble mat, wondering if next week you'll finally be recognized for your devotion, or if you should just work on your granola recipe. In the world of 1970s cults, it's all about who you know, what you believe, and whether your aura is bright enough to earn you a better seat at story time. Turns out even Utopia has rules. No shoes in the meditation yurt, no negative vibes, and definitely no sneaking out to McDonald's unless you want to spend an afternoon meditating about your impurities. For all the talk of freedom and cosmic oneness, the 1970s cult commune is basically a well-decorated boot camp with extra incense. It's easy to imagine that group life is nothing but hugs, laughter, and spontaneous drum circles. In reality, it's a labyrinth of unwritten rules, suggested behaviors, and enough dietary restrictions to confuse even the most seasoned yoga teacher. What began as a haven for the spiritually curious soon becomes a minefield of social faux pas and the occasional actual Paisley booby trap. The first thing you notice is the ever-growing list of posted regulations: no outside food, no synthetic fabrics, no gossiping during group om. There's a rotating energy guardian whose only job is to frown at anyone who brings in a can of Coke or wears shoes indoors. The daily schedule is rigidly flexible, meaning you're expected to go with the flow, just as long as that flow arrives precisely at 6 a.m. for sun salutations. But nothing, absolutely nothing, stirs up more drama than the rules about food. Communal meals are supposed to be love-fueled, plant-based affairs, infused with positive intentions and more lentils than a bulk food aisle. You're told that animal products disrupt your energy field, clog your chakras, and ruin the group's chances of collective enlightenment. The punishment for transgressions? At best, you get a pointed lecture from Denise about the karmic consequences of dairy. At worst, you get banished to the kitchen for an entire week, forced to rinse endless quinoa and contemplate the spiritual meaning of tofu. The great vegetarian schism arrives on a quiet Thursday. Someone finds an empty McDonald's bag hidden at the bottom of the recycling bin. The inner circle goes into crisis mode, holding an emergency vibe restoration meeting. Gary, usually a picture of calm, delivers a fiery speech about trust, honesty, and the sacredness of plant-based living. He never mentions names, but everyone knows who snuck out hint. Their aura was unusually greasy that morning. Suddenly, new rules appear overnight. No leaving the grounds without permission. No phone calls to outsiders. All groceries must be approved by the Dietary Enlightenment Subcommittee. There's talk of a cleanse, not the fun spa day kind, but a week of raw cabbage juice and journaling about temptation. If you're caught smuggling in cheese, you're sentenced to an extra meditation session in the reflection room, a drafty shed that smells like regret and lavender oil. The group starts policing itself. Whispers spread about who's cheating on the diet, who's sneaking into town for forbidden donuts, and who suspiciously volunteers to help with composting every time the group hosts a vegan potluck. There are side glances during dinner, veiled references to purity, and more drama over a carton of eggs than in most reality TV finales. This isn't just about food. It's about loyalty, identity, and whether you truly belong. You learn quickly, when in doubt, just ask if anyone wants more roasted root vegetables and keep your Big Mac cravings to yourself. The punishments, though couched in spiritual language, are remarkably effective. Meditation as penance, extra chores, or the dreaded cleansing fast ensure that most members toe the line. Public shaming is always gentle, just a group sharing session where everyone discusses how temptation is a natural part of growth and nobody's perfect. But some people could really try harder. By the end of it all, the rules have multiplied like sprouting mung beans. There are guidelines for everything: hugging, heart to heart only, singing, never before 10 a.m., even where to store your personal vibrations, in a clearly labeled basket by the door. And yet, somehow, the group survives. Maybe it's the structure, maybe it's the sense of shared struggle, or maybe it's just Stockholm Syndrome with more tie-dye. Either way, you're in deep now. And as you sit cross-legged at the next communal meal, nervously eyeing the tofu casserole, you realize that even in paradise, someone's got to make the rules and someone else has to clean up after the great vegetarian schism of 76. Eventually, someone starts selling t-shirts and handmade talismans. Enlightenment isn't free, apparently. There's a suggested donation, but it's not optional. And you're still waiting for your mail-order spiritual blessing to arrive. In the utopian vision painted by Gary and his cosmic crew, money is supposed to be a relic of the unenlightened world, a distraction from the real journey. But very quickly, you realize that spiritual awakening is a lot like summer camp. It comes with a price tag, and everything at the gift shop is labeled love offering. At first, it's all voluntary. Give what feels right, Gary says, while discreetly eyeing your wallet. Then, suddenly, what feels right turns out to be exactly $33.33 for a t-shirt silk-screened with the group's favorite mantra: Awaken, Align, Autopay. The merch table appears as if by magic. One week, it's just a humble corner in the meditation yurt with a few tie-dye headbands and hemp bracelets. By the next, it's a full-fledged boutique featuring crystal pendants, home-blessed candles, patchouli oil, and, for the truly devoted, a bedazzled walking stick, personally charged by Gary during a vision quest at the county fair. You're told these artifacts are energetic investments. They do, in fact, provide energy, mostly to Gary's gas tank. But the real revenue generator is the group's spiritual services. There are workshops on manifesting abundance, available for a sliding scale donation that never slides below $50, personalized astrological readings printed on recycled parchment, and, of course, the legendary mail-order prophecies. All you have to do is send in a stamped, self-addressed envelope and a gratitude tithe, and you'll receive a cryptic message handwritten by Denise, who moonlights as the group's resident oracle and part-time bookkeeper. The stars see you, and so does Gary. Please remit $11.11 for further clarity. Then there are the retreats, because nothing says enlightenment like spending a weekend at a lakeside cabin, surrounded by chanting and invoices. The retreats are billed as immersive experiences, and each comes with a packet of spiritual reading material, a schedule of workshops, and a registration fee that could pay your rent for 2 months. Meals are extra, unless you're fine living on spiritual nourishment and off-brand kombucha. Donations are technically optional, but skipping them is about as socially acceptable as double-dipping the hummus at group dinner. There's a giant donation jar at every meeting, always positioned so you have to walk past it on your way to the bathroom. The inner circle has been known to rattle it encouragingly, and Gary gives a special blessing to anyone who contributes above and beyond. This blessing is non-transferable and not redeemable for actual enlightenment. It doesn't stop at physical goods. Soon, the group offers subscriptions, monthly packages that include a blessed trinket, a typed-out affirmation, and, for premium members, a phone call with Gary himself, in which he'll ask how your chakras are doing, and gently remind you that prosperity is an energy flow, best directed toward his PayPal account. And then, there's the infamous mail-order prophecy. You fill out a questionnaire about your life goals and greatest fears, plus your credit card number, just in case, and weeks later, you receive a mysterious envelope. Inside is a divinely inspired message that's just vague enough to apply to anyone, but just specific enough that you consider framing it. Your time is coming. The moon shines on you. Increase your giving to unlock greater cosmic flow. Despite the obvious commerce, nobody really complains. There's something comforting about trading a few bucks for a sense of belonging, or at least for a commemorative mug that says, "I survived Gary's Ascension Retreat." It's a small price to pay for feeling part of the family, even if your spiritual blessing got lost in the mail and your crystal pendant turns out to be a painted pebble from the parking lot. So you keep paying, keep donating, and keep hoping your next purchase will be the one that finally opens your third eye. If nothing else, you've got the t-shirt, the bracelet, and a bank statement that's as spiritually enlightening as any vision quest. Welcome to enlightenment, now available in 3 convenient sizes, while supplies last. Sometimes, the spiritual journey goes sideways. People get lost in the woods. Someone tries to communicate with a street lamp. And there's always one incident involving interpretive dance and a minor fire. It's one thing for Gary to promise cosmic revelations and transcendent oneness with the universe. It's quite another when half the group is convinced they've slipped through a wormhole and the other half is arguing with the resident squirrel over who has better spiritual insights. LSD, after all, isn't known for its predictability. The guided journey might begin with solemn chants and Gary's reassuring voice, but the moment the tabs kick in, all bets are off. Take, for example, the time Denise went missing during a group hike. The plan was simple: a nature communion walk meant to connect everyone with the wisdom of the trees. Instead, Denise vanished for 3 hours and returned babbling about a secret council of chipmunks who'd shown her the meaning of life. Spoiler, it's acorns. Meanwhile, Gary had led the rest of the group in a trust exercise that mostly involved standing in a circle and humming until someone tripped over a tree root. It's hard to maintain a sense of cosmic significance when you're covered in mud and still missing a sandal. Back at the compound, things rarely went any smoother. Group meditations frequently devolved into what could only be described as nap time with extra hallucinations. At least once a month, someone became convinced they were a time traveler sent to warn the group about the dangers of polyester, or that their true spiritual form was, in fact, the lava lamp in the corner. The lava lamp declined to comment. But the true chaos started when the group tried to combine their spiritual insights with creative expression. Interpretive dance is all fun and games until someone decides that spinning while holding a lit incense stick is the key to enlightenment. The carpet never fully recovered from that night, and to this day, the smell of patchouli is tinged with faint whiffs of melted polyester and panic. Gary now begins every meeting with a stern reminder about fire safety and responsible transcendence. Then there was the time the group held a moonlight awakening on the lawn. It started beautifully. Blankets, guitars, the sounds of crickets, and group members quietly merging with the stars. But as the night wore on, one member, Rainbow Dave, attempted to commune with a nearby street lamp, believing it was a reincarnated Atlantean oracle. For an hour, he pleaded for guidance and, when none came, switched to trying to get the lamp to play Freebird. Others cheered him on, convinced that technology and spirit were finally merging. And let's not forget the talking squirrel. LSD's unpredictable side effects mean that every shadow in the garden is either an interdimensional messenger or, just as likely, Gary's neighbor's pet. The squirrel, sensing opportunity, and maybe the remains of a sacred trail mix, quickly became an honorary member. Half the group swore the squirrel delivered profound advice, which mostly amounted to bury your nuts and avoid the cat. The squirrel, wisely, kept its distance after the group attempted to induct it into the inner circle with a bead necklace and a miniature kaftan. It's easy to laugh at these stories in the light of day, but at the time, every mishap feels like an important chapter in your ongoing awakening. Getting lost in the woods becomes an epic soul journey. Falling asleep mid-meditation is spontaneous astral travel. Accidentally setting the meditation rug on fire? A sign from the spirit of transformation. The group is nothing if not resourceful. Every slip-up is rebranded as a breakthrough, and every failed vision quest is just proof that you're pushing the boundaries of consciousness. In the end, LSD mishaps are woven into the group's lore, retold at every potluck, and gently embellished with each telling. They're reminders that the path to enlightenment is never a straight line, especially when the universe keeps moving the furniture. And sometimes the greatest wisdom comes not from Gary, but from a squirrel, a street lamp, or the unmistakable realization that you should never mix interpretive dance with open flames. Eventually, the outside world notices. There are news vans at the gate. Your guru is doing interviews in a velvet robe, and someone is desperately hiding the incense stash. It was bound to happen. For months, the group has been getting weirder, the gatherings louder, and the outfits less and less suited for blending in anywhere outside a Renaissance fair. Maybe it was the chorus of midnight chanting, or the fact that Gary's followers keep showing up at the town's only grocery store demanding crystal-infused produce. Or maybe it was the series of suspiciously smoke-filled bonfires that sent the neighbors into an existential crisis, and possibly an asthma attack. Whatever the trigger, one morning you wake up to the sound of helicopters overhead and news vans fighting for parking with Rainbow Dave's psychedelic van. The first sign things are about to go sideways is the sudden arrival of local law enforcement. They politely but firmly ask if you have a permit for large-scale spiritual transformation. You don't, but Gary insists it's fine. He once had a vision that said bureaucracy is just an illusion created by people who fear the infinite. This argument does not impress the police, who remain stubbornly attached to the concept of zoning laws. Inside the compound, panic spreads faster than you can say Saturn is in retrograde. The inner circle scrambles to stash anything remotely suspicious: questionable mushrooms, blessed punch, and a suspicious quantity of glitter that nobody can explain. Denise is sent to purify the meditation yurt by smudging it with sage, and also by quickly shoving all the group's financial records under a pile of hemp yoga mats. Gary, meanwhile, is loving every minute of it. He greets the cameras in a full-length purple velvet robe, hair teased to the heavens, and enough crystal necklaces to make a minor earthquake sound musical. The journalists swarm him for interviews, asking tough questions about the group's practices, safety protocols, and the incident with the talking squirrel. Gary answers every inquiry with a dazzling smile, a cryptic parable, or, when desperate, a quote from the Beatles. He comes off as a charming eccentric, which works right up until someone produces video evidence of a group interpretive dance gone wrong and the infamous Celestial Punch Bowl incident. The rest of the group is divided. Some see the media frenzy as the ultimate validation. They said, "We'd change the world. And look, we're on TV." Others are less enthused, especially after a reporter tries to film inside the composting toilet and Moonbeam is caught giving a tearful monologue to a passing drone. The inner circle, usually so composed, is now mostly hiding behind a beaded curtain, hissing at each other about who invited the authorities to the full moon drum circle. SWAT teams are the next escalation, arriving with much less patience for cosmic excuses. The group is gently but firmly herded into the yard, where you all sit cross-legged under the watchful gaze of men in tactical gear, who are frankly unimpressed by your explanation that the smoke is just purifying the aura of the neighborhood. Gary tries to lead everyone in a unity chant, but it's hard to harmonize when you're surrounded by news cameras and someone is arguing about who ate the last vegan donut. In the aftermath, everything changes. The compound is inspected, the mail-order prophecy operation gets shut down, and several sacred objects are confiscated as evidence, mostly jars of questionable herbs and a rubber chicken someone swears is channeling St. Francis. Gary is questioned but released, having convinced the officers that enlightenment cannot be detained, only delayed. The media quickly moves on, chasing the next story, and you're left with the echoes of what was once the most colorful, chaotic, rule-bending group in the county. Still, the stories live on. There's a weird pride in having been part of that cult on the news, a badge of honor at dinner parties, and a treasure trove of cautionary tales for group therapy. Life is a little quieter now. a little more ordinary, and you can finally walk to the store without being interviewed about your opinions on aura alignment. But sometimes, late at night, you find yourself longing for the chaos, the absurd certainty, the shared illusions, and even the panic that comes when the outside world catches up to your little bubble of cosmic ambition. You might have lost the compound, the punch bowl, and at least 3 pairs of paisley pants, but you'll never lose the memories. And in the world of 70s cults, that's almost as good as enlightenment. Not everyone sticks around. People start sneaking out. Some realize enlightenment shouldn't be this expensive, and others are just homesick for their mum's spaghetti. Every utopia has its cracks, and the cosmic clubhouse is no exception. For a while, everything feels like one long festival. There's laughter, bongo circles, and the intoxicating sense of being in on a great cosmic secret. But sooner or later, the glitter starts to settle. The same group chants that once felt profound begin to sound a little like background noise at a laundromat. The never-ending energy exchange circles morph into debates over who's hoarding the best meditation pillows. Someone inevitably asks, "Wait, are we actually getting anywhere?" The first signs of unrest are always subtle. Denise, usually the picture of devotion, starts skipping morning sun salutations and spends her afternoons gazing longingly at the highway. Dave quietly stashes a phone in the composting toilet, texting cryptic messages to the outside world. If anyone asks, "I'm studying abroad. Please send cheese." Even the inner circle, so vigilant about enforcing the dress code, begins to look less coordinated, as if enlightenment has given way to existential exhaustion. Doubts spread like incense smoke. It begins with whispered questions at potluck dinners. "Do you think Gary really talks to dolphins?" And quickly escalates to more practical complaints. "How come the suggested donation keeps going up?" Or, "Why do we have a communal vision board if we're not allowed to pin up vacation brochures?" As the days grow longer and the carrot cake rations dwindle, the group starts to realize that nirvana shouldn't come with hidden fees, mandatory chores, or the constant threat of another group cleanse. The LSD doesn't help either. After months of enhanced meditation, some followers just want a clear-headed afternoon. Unwanted sobriety creeps in, and suddenly the world is a little sharper, the cult's routines a little sillier. The vegan meatloaf that once tasted like sacred wisdom now tastes like cold lentils and regret. For the first time in ages, someone admits aloud, "I miss my mum's spaghetti." A collective hush falls. Nostalgia is dangerous. It's the gateway drug to questioning why you ever traded your apartment for a mattress in the group's meditation yurt. Defections come in waves. Some slip away quietly, packing a duffel bag and leaving a heartfelt note. "May your chakras align, but I need Wi-Fi and central heating." Others go out with a bang, confronting Gary at a group meeting and demanding answers about the missing funds, the never-arriving mail-order prophecies, or why the inner circle got new pillows, while the rest of the group sleeps on yoga mats that smell faintly of kombucha. There are arguments, tears, and the occasional accidental fire drill when someone tries to cleanse negative energy with too much sage. And then there are those who don't leave physically, but mentally check out. They stop chanting, stop contributing to the group meals, and start fantasizing about pizza delivery and cable TV. Even Gary can sense the shift. His sermons grow longer, more desperate, the metaphors more convoluted. Imagine your soul as a spaghetti noodle. If you boil it too long, it loses all meaning. Fewer people show up for the mandatory voluntary midnight meditations, and the communal garden is left to the weeds. In the end, the great cosmic experiment runs on borrowed time. Those who stay do so out of habit, or because leaving feels scarier than staying. Those who go discover the peculiar relief of sleeping alone, eating what they want, and finally reclaiming their individuality. No one leaves unchanged. There's always a lingering fondness for the absurd rituals, the brief feeling of belonging, and the conviction that maybe, just maybe, you were onto something before the donations dried up and the vegan lasagna started to repeat itself. Because the truth is, every movement built on magic and moonbeams is only as strong as the hunger for home-cooked meals and a little old-fashioned common sense. And sometimes, the road to self-discovery leads straight through a cult and right back to your mum's kitchen table, spaghetti and all. Leaving a cult is tricky. There are tearful goodbyes, awkward explanations, and the challenge of finding your shoes again. But you make it out with a great story and a lifelong aversion to tie-dye. It starts as a quiet thought, a gentle longing for normalcy, maybe for a night without group chanting, or a meal that isn't garnished with raw kale and spiritual guilt. The urge to leave bubbles up slowly, like gas in a bottle of homemade kombucha, but in a community built on togetherness, any hint of wanting out feels like a crime against cosmic unity. You rehearse your lines in your head. It's not you, it's me. Actually, it's Gary. And the quinoa, the first and most vital step. Planning your escape. Without triggering a group-sharing circle intervention. Some choose the gradual fade, stop showing up for sunrise meditations, then for group meals, then for the weekly chakra tune-ups. You claim you're on a personal journey or processing cosmic downloads solo. If you're lucky, the inner circle will assume you've simply achieved a new plane of enlightenment that involves spending most of your time at the library. Others prefer the midnight dash. You wait until everyone is blissed out on ceremonial tea and whale sounds. Then quietly gather your belongings, half of which have been borrowed or lost to the group's all-purpose sacred storage bin. You move with ninja-like stealth, trying not to wake Moonbeam, who sleeps by the door, or step on the stray harmonium someone left in the hallway. With any luck, you make it out before sunrise, the first rays catching your mismatched socks and that hoodie you swore you'd never wear again. But escaping the group physically is only half the battle. The emotional disentanglement is where things get complicated. There are the goodbyes, sometimes whispered, sometimes weepy, always more dramatic than you'd expect. Denise will hug you so hard, you'll wonder if she's trying to transfer her aura. Gary might look at you with mournful eyes, offering a final cryptic blessing. May the path of your soul spiral homeward, preferably with a forwarding address for our newsletter. There will be promises to stay connected in spirit, which, in cult terms, means endless invitations to return for guest meditations and, inevitably, to donate. Next comes the awkward explanations to friends and family on the outside. They're thrilled to have you back, but a little confused by your new wardrobe and your sudden aversion to kale. You field questions like, were you really meditating or just really napping? And did you actually see the universe inside your elbow? You smile, tell the stories you can, and keep a few of the stranger details to yourself. Some things, like Rainbow Dave's brief romance with a street lamp, simply defy explanation. The hardest part might be shaking off the invisible rules that stick to you long after you've left. You catch yourself blessing your coffee, chanting while waiting for the microwave, or scanning the sidewalk for forbidden shoes. It takes a while to remember you can eat what you want, wear denim without guilt, and go to sleep without group approval. The ordinary world feels dazzling and a little lonely, but it's also a relief. No more vegan lasagna, no more mandatory hugging circles, and no more existential debates about the emotional needs of potted plants. And of course, there's the matter of your aura. Will they judge you? Probably. But you learn quickly that you can survive a little judgment, especially after months of being assessed for vibrational purity and the luminosity of your inner being. You start to wear colors again, not tie-dye, find joy in small things, and eventually realize that you're free. Free to believe, to question, to occasionally miss the weirdness, but never to return to mandatory interpretive dance, unless you really want to. In the end, leaving a cult isn't about slamming the door or burning your last caftan. It's about reclaiming the right to be weird on your own terms, and about accepting that sometimes the hardest path is just the walk to the door with your shoes in one hand, and your dignity, mostly, intact in the other. And yes, you do get a great story out of it. Just don't expect anyone to believe the part about the talking squirrel. Life after culthood involves group therapy, self-help books, and a lot of jokes about how you spent 6 months convinced the cat was channeling Nikola Tesla. Healing is weird, but at least it's yours. The first thing you notice when you leave is the silence. No more group chants at dawn. No gongs announcing meal times. And, most importantly, no Gary lecturing about the sacred geometry of quinoa. For a while, it's disorienting. Your days no longer revolve around the collective schedule, and your nights are suddenly free of drum circles and arguments about the emotional needs of potted succulents. The world feels both too big and too quiet, like someone has suddenly turned off the cosmic radio. You start the process of re-entry the way most people do, by reacquainting yourself with old friends, family, and the magic of solo Netflix marathons. There's a period of awkwardness. People are curious, polite, but wary, asking gentle questions about what it was like inside. They want to know if you really tried to telepathically communicate with wildlife, or if you still believe that gluten blocks spiritual energy. You quickly learn how to laugh at yourself, turning the strangest moments into stories that get better and more unbelievable with every retelling. Remember when we thought we could levitate, or when Gary banned red food coloring because it angered the root chakra? You all laugh, and little by little, your past feels lighter. Still, the healing is anything but linear. One day you feel free, unburdened by groupthink and dietary restrictions. The next, you're fighting the urge to smudge your living room with sage and organize your spice rack by vibrational frequency. Lingering habits sneak up on you, hesitating before making a decision without a group vote, blessing your takeout pizza, or catching yourself about to align your aura in the middle of a staff meeting. Some triggers are weirder than others. Hearing a didgeridoo, spotting tie-dye at the farmer's market, or just catching a whiff of patchouli. It takes time, patience, and maybe a few support groups full of people who've also seen the light, or at least spent a little too long squinting at it. Therapy helps, especially the kind where everyone sits in a circle and talks about how their cult used crystals as a currency, or decided the neighbor's cat was the reincarnation of a Serbian inventor. There's comfort in not having to explain why you know how to make kombucha with 4 ingredients and a single moonlit chant. You compare notes, swap cautionary tales, and bond over the shared embarrassment of old group photos, where everyone's wearing matching kaftans and suspiciously large wooden beads. Eventually, you move on. You pick up hobbies that have nothing to do with enlightenment. Hiking just to hike, baking because you want carbs, and watching reality TV without searching for hidden cosmic messages. Your bookshelf fills with self-help books that promise healing, humor, and, most importantly, no more donation envelopes. You build new friendships, some with fellow escapees, others with people who can't tell an aura from a latte. The jokes get better, the wounds heal, and the stories become legends. Reminders of a time when you went searching for answers and found a community, chaos, and a lifetime supply of bongo drum memories. Every so often, though, you'll find yourself wondering about the others. Did Denise finally get her own place? Is Moonbeam still wearing two scarves at once? Did Gary ever finish his memoir, Awakening Through Merch? You send a mental shout-out to everyone who's ever tried to levitate, chanted to the moon, or just tried to figure out life one questionable smoothie at a time. Because healing after a cult is never a straight path, but it is yours, messy, hilarious, and, if you're lucky, a little wiser for the journey. And when in doubt, just remember, you may have fallen for the group's craziest ideas, but at least you never tried to marry the meditation rug. Probably. In the end, it all comes back to the same human longing. To belong, to understand, to feel a little less alone in a universe that mostly just wants you to pay your taxes. LSD was just the shortcut. Sometimes a detour, sometimes a dead end, but always a wild ride. You look back on it all, on the guru in the kaftan, the endless group meditations, and the night you swore the cat was giving you career advice, and realize there was something underneath the patchouli and the paranoia that drew people in. At its heart, every cult, every spiritual collective, was just a gathering of people who wanted to matter, to connect, to believe that the world could be something more than work, bills, and the slow march toward the next oil crisis. LSD didn't cause the search for meaning. It just made the colors brighter, the questions louder, and the answers occasionally shaped like a glowing platypus. Maybe you never found enlightenment. Maybe your greatest revelation was that you really like carrot cake and you're not great at yoga. Still, for a little while, you belonged to something bigger, a group, a purpose, even if it was sometimes just about who could chant the longest without sneezing. You learned to laugh at yourself, at Gary's wild-eyed optimism, and at the fact that a roomful of adults could be completely convinced that tap water held the secrets of Atlantis if you said it with enough confidence and a little help from hallucinogens. The longing that drew you in never really goes away. After all, life is confusing, and the world never hands out a user manual, just cryptic hints, odd dreams, and the occasional cosmic prank. We want to know that our days mean something, that our weirdness is okay, and that someone out there will nod in solemn agreement when we announce, "The universe is inside my elbow." That search can lead you to good places, friendship, art, laughter, even love. It can also lead you down more complicated paths, past false prophets, overpriced crystal necklaces, and nights you'll spend wishing you could just have a normal dinner without someone insisting you bless the tofu. And yet, that's the beauty of the whole wild journey. Whether you found your way out, stayed just long enough to collect some stories, or are still tempted by the occasional consciousness-raising retreat ad online, you're part of a long tradition of humans who want answers. Sometimes the search leads to a breakthrough, sometimes to a breakdown, and sometimes just to a lifelong aversion to communal didgeridoo music. But every detour, every misstep, is proof that you were alive, curious, and willing to risk looking ridiculous in pursuit of a little wonder. LSD, for all its wild reputation, didn't actually open any cosmic doors that weren't already slightly ajar. It just flung them wide, let in the noise, and made it impossible to ignore the questions you'd been quietly stifling under responsible adulthood. For better or worse, it stripped away your usual answers, made you see the patterns in the wallpaper, and, if you were lucky, helped you realize that you didn't need a guru to tell you how to be whole. In the end, cults are just exaggerated echoes of what we all do. Gather together. Try to make sense of the mess. Look for patterns. Tell stories, and reach for meaning in a universe that refuses to explain itself. Sometimes you find it in laughter, sometimes in LSD, sometimes in the knowing smile of someone who's seen the inside of your soul and your sock drawer. So, as you drift off to sleep, spare a kind thought for every seeker, every lost soul, every accidental cult member with a drawer full of tie-dye and a notebook full of revelations. If nothing else, you made it out with your sense of humor intact, and the knowledge that the greatest mystery isn't out there, but somewhere inside you, waiting for a quiet moment and maybe a good piece of carrot cake. Every evening ends with music, lots of it. The sacred playlist is just the same 3 Crosby, Stills and Nash songs on repeat, interspersed with off-key chanting and a surprise appearance by someone on the tambourine who has absolutely no rhythm but endless enthusiasm. You close your eyes, trying to achieve transcendence, but all you get is a persistent thumping and a haunting suspicion that enlightenment should come with earplugs. Music, in the world of the 1970s cult, is more than background noise. It's a spiritual tool, a group ritual, and occasionally an endurance test. As the sun sets, Gary announces it's time to raise the vibration. And suddenly, the living room is transformed into a full-blown jam session. Everyone grabs something to play: maracas, guitar, spoons, rain sticks, a slightly warped recorder, and of course, at least 2 didgeridoos. The instruments may not be in tune, or even belong to the Western musical scale, but that's hardly the point. Feel the rhythm, not the rules, Gary insists, waving his incense stick like a conductor's baton. The centerpiece of every night is the sacred playlist. Technically, it's a battered tape deck and a handful of cassettes, the edges chewed by time, and one particularly curious cat. Crosby, Stills, and Nash drone on, their harmonies weaving in and out of the enthusiastic chaos. In between, someone insists on chanting ancient Sanskrit mantras, despite only knowing 2 lines and inventing the rest as they go. The effect is hypnotic, disorienting, and occasionally hilarious, especially when Denise forgets the words and substitutes them with whatever she saw on a cereal box that morning. Participation isn't optional. If you can clap, hum, or bang 2 salad bowls together, you're in. Don't worry about keeping time. Gary reminds everyone that linear rhythm is a construct of the unenlightened. All that matters is being present. So you find yourself swaying, clapping, or thumping along, occasionally locking eyes with someone who looks equally bewildered and determined to pretend they're feeling the cosmic groove. As the hours roll on, the playlist blurs into a soundscape of joy and gentle torment. There's the inevitable drum solo, always too long, the haunting recorder interlude, always too sharp, and the group vocal improvisation that sounds like what you imagine enlightenment would be if it was being chased by a swarm of bees. Rainbow Dave takes over the tambourine, beating out rhythms that defy physics, common sense, and the patience of anyone trying to meditate. But enthusiasm trumps skill, and everyone cheers for him anyway. After all, this is a judgment-free zone, except for occasional side-eye from the inner circle when someone accidentally brings in a harmonica, deemed too mainstream for the spiritual set. Sometimes, music and mantra merge into something truly communal. As the chanting gets louder and the rhythms more erratic, there are moments when you actually forget how silly it all is. You lose yourself in the group's energy, floating above the racket, convinced for just a minute that you really are channeling the universal frequency. Then Gary tries to start a group yodel, and the spell is broken. There's always one song that never ends, an endless loop of Carry On or Sweet. Judy Blue Eyes, its lyrics gradually warping into group jokes and inside references. People groan, roll their eyes, and sing along anyway. Someone jokes that this is the real initiation rite. If you can survive the sacred playlist without fleeing into the night, You're ready for anything the universe, or Gary, throws at you. Eventually, the jam session winds down. Exhausted, ears ringing, you collapse on your sleeping mat. The echoes of chanting and offbeat percussion still buzzing in your mind. The night ends not with enlightenment, but with a quiet gratitude that you've survived another session, bonded with your fellow seekers by music, humor, and the shared memory of one truly catastrophic recorder solo. And as you drift off, you realize that maybe that's what the sacred playlist was all along. A reminder that searching for meaning can be messy, loud, and a little ridiculous, but always better when you sing along, even if you have no idea what comes next. So here you are, drifting gently back to reality, a little wiser, a little weirder, and maybe still hearing faint echoes of bongo drums in the distance. Tonight, you survived the world of 1970s cult leaders, LSD-fueled enlightenment, and the endless search for meaning, armed only with your skepticism, your sense of humor, and hopefully, your shoes. As you settle in, take a moment to appreciate just how easy you have it now. You can Google your existential questions instead of having to follow a guy named Rainbow Dan into the desert. Your sleep aid of choice probably isn't a questionable smoothie passed around a drum circle. And best of all, your aura is safe from unsolicited analysis by strangers in kaftans. But maybe, just maybe, you can relate to the wild, ridiculous hope that drove people into those cults. The longing to belong, to matter, to wake up and find a little magic in the world, even if it sometimes comes wrapped in polyester and questionable intentions. History, even when it's swirling in tie-dye and patchouli, is just a story of people trying to find their way. Sometimes through wisdom, sometimes through trial and error, and occasionally through spectacularly bad decisions involving farm animals and homemade incense. So tonight, as you tuck yourself in, maybe send a silent thank you to the universe, or at least to indoor plumbing and Wi-Fi, for giving you a safe place to land. No drum circles required. Rest easy knowing you've already passed the ultimate loyalty test, making it through this story without joining a single commune. Because if history teaches us anything, it's that people are stubborn, hopeful, and, let's face it, a little bit absurd. And that's what makes the world, and every strange era in it, worth dreaming about. Sleep well. May your dreams be free of prophecies, scribbled on napkins, and your spirit animals behave themselves. Good night.